world, Hollywood, many aspects of life around us tell us that if you really want to have a happy and a fun-lived life, forget about the law of God and do what feels good to you. If you really follow God's law, a moral standard, well, that just takes all the fun out of life. Heidelberg Catechism shows to us the very opposite is true. And thus, as we begin to look at now the sections in the Catechism, starting with the first one, which is our need, it introduces that by asking the question, from where do you know your misery? Note the word that is used, and that is that the life of sin, the life which forgets about the law of God, is a life which is not a life of happiness, but the very opposite is true, is a life of misery. That's what Satan wants man to have. That's why he tempted Adam and Eve and led them into sin, because Satan desires man to be miserable. In fact, it goes back to who we are as God's people. God made us that what is the essence of our nature, to enjoy life. And God really does want you to have a life filled with joy and happiness and comfort. And that's by being connected with God and having a relationship with God. To be cut off from God is to live miserably. And that's the reality. I like to think of the law of God. And so we go back to, how do you know it? Well, it's the law of God. I like to think of the law of God in much of the same way as you think of a mirror. When you look into a mirror, it reflects back to you what you really look like. It tells you the truth. If you take an honest look at the law of God and all that it says, that it's not just a matter of outward failure to keep it, but what's in your heart and what's in your thought process and what you say and what you do. What is clear, what reflects back to you in a very clear way from the law of God, is that you are dead in sin. I am dead in sin. We have no hope within ourselves. Life cannot be lived that way. We must find help from God. And that's the point that the Catechism brings us to, by simply asking the question, where do you know your misery? Well, the answer is very simple, from the law of God. You can think of the law of God in the way of a mirror, again, from this perspective. If I want to really convince myself that I'm looking pretty good, the way to do that is to never look in a mirror. And then I can convince myself that things are just great. And so if I avoid the law of God, the law just makes people feel bad, and we're told sometimes. The law just gets in the way of happiness. If I ignore the law of God, I can convince myself that I'm okay. But that's a lie. We're not okay. Just like I need to look into the mirror to make sure that I know what my needs are. I am taking care of myself because it doesn't lie. I need to be reminded what God's law is continuously, not in the sense of, well, you have to do this in order to be right with God. We cannot keep the law of God. Christ has kept it for us. We keep it in response of thankfulness to him, but we will get to that later on. But the point is simply, the law of God leads you to where you come before God and say, Lord, I need your help. And so that's the starting point of the message of the gospel. We are in trouble. Our life is not a fulfilling life. Death is fearful. The answer is to know what our needs are, so that then we can seek the answer.